I was looking at the wood floor in this house the other day, and it got me thinking. The floor, especially in front of this old fireplace, is just covered with burn marks and holes. The wood is heavily worn, and the color of the floor is just the color of time. It's a really rich, dark brown color. When I look at the marks on this floor, it really makes me think, and I wanted to share just a little bit of this with you all today. The marks on this floor speak of a different time. I want you to imagine with me, just for a few minutes, what this place was like when this house was built. This house was built over 95 years ago. When this house was built, it was really just 2 rooms as far as I can tell. It was this room, which is the living room, that has this big fireplace, and then it was our bedroom. And our bedroom has a fireplace directly on the back of this fireplace. I imagine a family living here around 1920, and it's completely dark except for what they would call a coal oil lantern and the light from the fireplace. So imagine a cold winter night and a family gathered here around the fire. They've cooked their meal here. They've washed their dishes in this room. Now, in order to wash the dishes, they actually had to go to a spring or to the creek and get a bucket of water and bring it up and heat it on the fire. Waiting in the other room is a cold bedroom. And before you go to bed, you have to use the bathroom. You would go down the hill to the creek and use the outhouse. I was reading this evening about how much the times have changed in the past 100 years. And I was reading about how agriculture has changed in the past 100 years. 100 years ago, in the United States, most people grew up on a farm. 100 years ago, most farms had chickens, had a milk cow, grew their own corn for animal feed, and also for humans to eat. And most farms also had hogs. Now when you look at farms in the United States, actually only 4% of farms have chickens on them. So agriculture has dramatically changed and specialized. There are actually more hogs in North Carolina than there are people. There's about 10.1 million hogs in North Carolina. There's one county towards the eastern end of the state called Duplin County, and there are 2.2 million hogs in that county alone. Those hogs make more sewage waste than the whole New York City metropolitan area. So on that end of the state, there's these areas with extremely highly concentrated agricultural production. And on the western end of the state where we are, there's many counties, including the county we're in, where there is no large-scale agriculture production, at least not of poultry and hogs. There's cattle being raised everywhere. So all these numbers, all this information, it just speaks of a huge shift in agriculture from a highly diffuse system to an extremely concentrated industrial system that we have today. And why am I talking about all these changes? How do all these changes relate to my floor and this old fireplace and this old house? All these things are related because they affect the way that we live. What have we lost with all these changes? I was talking to one of our neighbors recently, and she's lived pretty much in this little valley her whole life, 70 plus years. Something that made her sad is that neighbors now don't just hang out and socialize in the neighborhood like they used to. And I have a few ideas for why this is the case. And I think it's probably has to do with television and the hours we spend on television, and also more recently the hours we spend on the internet. Now, I'm no Luddite. Obviously, I'm sitting here talking to a camera. I have a computer in my fireplace. I know that's weird, but what I want to do and what I want to encourage you to do, or rather remind you to do, is to just be conscious in my life of how the world has changed so dramatically. I want to be deliberate in how I live, and I want to try to hold on to some of these good things from the past. Maybe hold on to them and regain them. As humans, we have a many thousand-year tradition of participating in the production of our food. In many ways, this has been the thousands of years of a curse, because it is a lot of work. It's a huge amount of work, and it was always a fight to avoid starvation. There was a level of desperation in it that many of us will never experience, or I hope we don't. And maybe ask someone you know who's in their 80s or 90s, do you think that people are actually happier now? Are people happier now that we have this intricately interconnected world through the internet? Are people happier now that they buy all their food at the grocery store? I think there's so many blessings that we have in the internet, and it is a huge blessing that I don't have to worry about my kids starving. But I feel like we've gone too far, and I feel like the risk is really great. This is really why we moved out here. This is why we're doing what we're doing, because we really think there's a lot of value in participating in our food production, in interacting with animals. I want to embrace those elements that are positive, that we can get from the internet and that we can get from modern agriculture. But I also want to hold on to, I want to regain those elements that are good from the past. I want to remember the way that the people who built this house lived. I want to remember the incredible difference between their life and our life. You know, the closest town of any economic significance is about 5 miles from here, and that takes us like 10 minutes to get there in the car. But in 1920, when this house was built, people weren't making that trip. That's over the mountain, 5 miles over the mountain, with a mule or an old model Ford. That's going to be like a 30 or a 40, maybe an hour or a 2-hour trip. People were going just down the road. There's a little place down there, and it's not a town anymore. You know, there's a post office down there. There's a little general store there that's just a mess, honestly. But it's not a town. But that's where people went. That was actually a center of community. People would go from here just a mile down the road to that little town. It has a name, but it's basically forgotten. People just drive through it on their way to the consolidated town that remains. So we have fewer towns. Now we have fewer communities. We have fewer farms. And yet they say we have more interconnectedness. I hope you got something out of me just talking and telling you what I've been thinking about. This is a totally different video. I just thought I'd turn all the electricity off, of course, apart from the computer, and just sit here and just imagine what it was like in the 1920s when folks were living in this house with no electricity, no running water, and they were cooking over an open fire.